You won't be surprised to find out that there is gridlock in Washington. Nothing's really getting done, at least nothing good. And so every once in a while we like to look in with the American public and find out who do you blame for the gridlock that's going on right now. And so we have some very interesting polling data. Let's see, where is this coming from? Oh, this is a Quinnipiac poll. And so there's four interesting statements that we're gonna talk about here. So when asked, 51% blame Republicans for being determined to block Obama. Very astute of you, American public. While 35% said the president lacks the skills to persuade congressional leaders to work together. So that's interesting. 51% blaming the Republicans is really about as high as you can expect the American public to go, since obviously most Republicans are not going to blame the Republicans, because even if they think that it's gridlock, even if they think the Republicans are responsible, they think that's a good thing. And so they're hardly going to assign blame to the Republicans there. And 35% saying the president lacks the skills. Some percentage of the people responding to this poll simply hate Obama. They think that he's a Kenyan Marxist. And so they're gonna check every one of the negative Obama statements. And so I'm not too worried about that. Moving on to two other interesting responses. 53% say that Obama was doing too little to compromise with members of Congress. Before we go on to the last one, I want to address that. That is freaking ridiculous. The problem here is that the little bit of legislation that we actually do have passed by this Congress is because Obama, and also, to be fair, the Democrats in the Senate have done too much to compromise. I mean, look at this immigration bill. It's a clusterfuck. It's basically just a border security bill with, hopefully, if the House allows it, some pathway to citizenship in the next 250 years. The student loan interest rate bill. Now, I don't know how much direct control Obama had over the Senate negotiations there, but basically the reason that we didn't, before July 1st, have a deal was because the rates were going to double to 6.8, and the Republicans weren't doing enough to deal with that. So instead, we have this variable interest rate that, yeah, now looks pretty good, but basically we've just said, yeah, we'll get to that 6.8%. It just may take 10 years, while also, by the way, doing nothing to deal with the rising cost of tuition. But finally, 68% say Republican leaders were doing too little to compromise with the president. Again, when you look at the numbers and you understand that a certain percentage of the people taking this poll are Republicans, and they're not going to say no to that, 68% means basically unanimous response on that issue. And I think that that's the number one point here. I think that, first of all, the Republicans did very little to hide, what their plan was when Obama was elected. Mitch McConnell said, we don't want him to have a second term. We want him to fail. That's what Rush Limbaugh said. And the Republicans seem to agree. And they're not going to give him anything, basically, unless, like with the immigration bill and like with the student loan rate bill, it's basically what they wanted to begin with. We can get those passed, so hurrah. I like that the American public seems to understand what's going on, considering that many don't watch the news at all, and even when they watch the news, it's just about Casey Anthony and George Zimmerman. I suppose it's good that they have some understanding of what's going on. But I want to put a bottom line on this one. Whether you think the Republicans are to blame, or whether you think Obama isn't doing enough to negotiate or to compromise with the Republicans, the bottom line here is that very little is going to get done. I mean, we're in the small period between the presidential election and the midterm elections, and nothing is really being passed. Nothing that the Democrats who got this Democratic Senate and Democratic president into office, the Democrats in the country who voted more for Democratic congressional candidates than Republicans got, nothing that they want is going to be passed, because in a very short time, the midterm elections are going to be coming. There's a very real chance that the Democrats might lose the Senate. Almost no chance whatsoever that they'll take over the Congress. So they're going to want to be very careful to minimize the chance of losing the Senate. And look, honestly, whether they retain the Senate, or especially if they don't, the idea that more will be done in the remaining 2 years of Obama's term, that's a fairy tale. That's a fantasy. It's not going to happen.